On this episode of the Irish History Boys, Cormac Moore and I are discussing where exactly is the border in the waters around Ireland? Where are the territorial waters? And we're also discussing post-partition split in athletics and why I'm a total idiot for not knowing who Ronnie Delany is.
Three High Court judges have held that the Irish government has no power to legislate in respect of the fisheries in the seas around Northern Ireland, and that the authority to do so lies with the British government. The Northern Ireland Court of Appeal, consisting of the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Justice Curran and Lord Justice Jones, gave their reserved judgment in the case in the High Court in Belfast yesterday. They upheld the appeal by the Crown against the decision of Mr Patrick Maxwell RM, when at Cushendall Court he dismissed summonses against 4 Cushendun fishermen brought under the Fisheries Act of 1966. The appeal was by way of a case stated. Mr Maxwell, in dismissing the summonses, held that the British government or the Northern Ireland authorities had no power to legislate in respect of the coastal waters of Northern Ireland. He based his argument on the agreement between Britain and Ireland of December 1921, that's the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which was confirmed by the Free State Agreement Act of 1922, where the fisheries and seas around the whole coast of Ireland were transferred to the Irish government.
Oh, beautifully read, Cormac. Welcome to the Irish History Boys with myself, Tim McGarry.
And me, Cormac Moore.
And he Cormac Moore. Cormac, this is the story from 1975. The Irish History Boys, of course, we are looking at Irish history 100 years ago and 50 years ago. This is a story from 50 years ago, from 1975, but of course relates to a story 100 years ago, which is the border of Northern Ireland and Ireland is never, ever finalised. We thought it was all finalised by the Boundary Commission, which you're a fan of. How's
Yes.
the book selling, by the way, the Boundary Commission book? Is it flying off the shelves?
It's about to go on sale.
It's about to go on sale.
So I think it's already sold out in pre-orders, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
we'll have to check in on that.
I still haven't got my free copy, but we'll work on that.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
You get back to me on that. But look, this is quite a serious issue. As usual, the court's kind of, it's about 3 Cushendun fishermen. The next thing we know, they're bringing up the Anglo-Irish Agreement of 1921.
Yeah.
What's this about? What's going on here, Cormac? Explain this to somebody like me who kind of vaguely knows what I'm talking about. I thought the border was established in 1921, firmly established in 1925 with the Boundary Commission. Why are we arguing about fish?
Well, it actually goes back to before the treaty. It goes back to the Government of Ireland Act 1920. So when they were drawing up the British government drew up the Government of Ireland Act bill in 1919 to basically divide Ireland. So it's going
this is the act that creates Northern Ireland.
That creates Northern Ireland. So this was a committee was set up by David Lloyd George, led by Walter Long. He was the First Lord of the Admiralty, and his assistant, by the way, was James Craig, which was quite convenient. And he set up a committee, basically look at get a solution to Ireland, and they come up with the Government of Ireland Act 1920. So for the first time, this is this idea of giving, actually, instead of excluding Northern Ireland from the rest of Ireland and remaining wholly within Westminster, they go, right, let's give Northern Ireland a parliament.
Right.
And
so we're
two parliaments in Ireland. But they said we're going to have a Council of Ireland as well. So we want unity. This is what the British said publicly. We want unity. We want the Irish people to get on, and eventually, both parliaments will be subsumed into one parliament. In the meantime, we'll have a Council of Ireland, and there'll be 20 representatives from each parliament on that council, and it would decide on issues of common concern. And one of those issues was fisheries. So this goes to the whole idea of territorial waters.
Because we love a fish supper in this part of the world.
Exactly.
Fishing is quite important industry in Ireland, of course, isn't it?
It's huge industry in Ireland. But it was very hard to delineate a border on water. Right. Where does the border begin and end on a body of water, like Lough Foyle, for example? Which say if you spawn fish in the one side of the border, those fish don't know which jurisdiction they should or should not go into. They will go in both jurisdictions. Yeah. So there's a load of issues. So the British government decided, look, fisheries has to be kind of an all Ireland a mechanism around fisheries. So that was going to be included in the Council of Ireland. So then we go to late 1921. Northern Ireland is being set up. It's established under the Government of Ireland Act, which was totally rejected by the majority of people in Ireland. Sinn Féin has its truce with the British government after the War of Independence. It has its truce in July 1921, and during the Anglo Treaty negotiations from October to December 1921, the Northern question, Ulster question, is one of the biggest issues. Sinn Féin want unity. and they agree on this boundary commission, as we've discussed previously. But they also agree that the powers that were going to be given to Southern Ireland with the Council of Ireland were going to be transferred to the Irish Free State created under the treaty.
All right, so the Council of Ireland was supposed to exist. It never came into any power. So the Council of Ireland, we're going to create Northern Ireland, we're going to create Southern Ireland, but there'll be this overarching Council of Ireland where the two parliaments and politicians will get together and eventually, hopefully, and that was genuinely the hope at some stage of the British government and most people saying, well, eventually Ireland will be reunited.
Well, I don't think it was the hope, really. I think they were playing politics. You know, they knew that.
But people took it seriously at the time, did they not? The Council of Ireland?
Well, actually, Ulster Unionists did. Once Northern Ireland was created, one of the first decisions of the government was to appoint its 20 members to the Council of Ireland, including the leading politicians like James Craig and all of the cabinet ministers. But the Free State agreed, look, we'll keep on the Council of Ireland through us instead of through Southern Ireland, as 26 counties would have been called if they'd accepted the Government of Ireland Act. But the Council of Ireland only dealt with 3 issues: fisheries, diseases of animals like foot and mouth, and railways. There were the 3 issues it was meant to deal with. Now, it was postponed in 1922 for 5 years, meant to go to 27, but it was actually abandoned with the tripartite agreement, the boundary commission agreement, basically in 1925. So it never actually met. So that was one issue where this is how fisheries was going to be decided. Everyone knew it was a very complicated issue, very divisive issue. It was very, very, very ambiguous. But another spanner in the work was actually the treaty as well, in terms of the constitutional status of both jurisdictions. So the Free State came into being as basically all of Ireland. So
claimed all of Ireland.
So the Irish Free State was meant to be the whole of Ireland.
Yes, and unionists were allowed to
opt out.
Opt out, which they did within 24 hours or something.
Within 24 hours. It was meant to be Ulster Month. It was Ulster Day. Yeah.
Right.
But they when they opted out, what the Irish government argument was about fisheries, that when the Irish Free State created Ireland, the whole island of Ireland, and it was up to the 6 counties and 2 cities of Ulster to opt out.
Right.
So the Irish government says the Government of Ireland Act says Northern Ireland is Derry City, Belfast, County Antrim, Armagh, Down, Derry, Tyrone, Fermanagh. Not the territorial waters.
Didn't mention the waters.
Just the boroughs and counties.
So they didn't mention the...
Never mentioned the water and the territorial waters around.
Right.
So the Irish governments, for decades, and they still claim it, legally, and this was the argument in 1975 by this gentleman, this judge in Cushendall, that Northern Ireland has no right to the territorial waters, or Britain for that matter, around Ireland, because the Free State was created as Ireland, as a whole island entity and its territorial waters, and Northern Ireland, created under the Government of Ireland Act, was only the 6 counties and the 2 cities.
Right.
So that's where the Irish government's claim was.
Right, but so the government or the courts in Northern Ireland are rejecting that argument, saying no, the Free State government of the Republic of Ireland does not own all the waters around Ireland.
Of course, yeah.
Now, this is quite... I mean, my partner's a pescatarian. I didn't know what a pescatarian was. I thought it was she only ate Presbyterian fish or something. But fish are quite important. So what are the practical effects then of not knowing where there's a line down the border? Is this fishermen in Derry fighting with fishermen in Donegal? Or what is they saying, this is our fish, you can't fish here? Or what is the practical... or fishermen in Donegal stealing our good British fish. So
the Honourable Irish Society of London had been responsible since, I think it was King Charles II, to manage the fisheries around Derry, basically. So Lough Foyle. So Lough Foyle is the biggest flashpoint for decades around fishing. And then once partition happened, the Irish Society transferred or leased that right to the Foyle and Ban Fisheries Company. So based in Derry. So it thought, because of a charter since Charles II, that it had rights to fish and to control fishing on Lough Foyle, all of Lough Foyle. But Donegal, fishermen were saying, we're not part of Northern Ireland. We don't answer to the Ban and Foyle Fisheries Company. We are Ransom's Free State, and so they went fishing all in Lough Foyle. There was no kind of delimited area that let's have an agreement here. This has gone on for decades. Yeah. There was no delimited agreement. Okay, well look, you try half Lough Foyle, you can fish half the Lough Foyle, you can fish the other half. That never happened. So there was a lot of incursions. Like Northern Ireland fishermen believed, and authorities believed, they could fish all of Lough Foyle and had full rights to that. And Donegal fishermen, but likewise, they fish all over.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of flashpoints. Like there was guns used, there was boats destroyed. Guns used, yeah. So the Foyle and Ban, the fishery company tried to enforce its rules that Donegal fishermen, particularly from Moville and places like that.
Moville, Greencastle, because I was in Greencastle not so long ago, and it's still an issue up there.
It still is, yeah.
And are they allowed to fish wherever they want now in Lough Foyle?
There's a regulator, there's a new body on the Good Friday Agreement. So these flashpoints are happening all the time in the 20s. Like, it doesn't happen, every year or anything, but it could be every 4 or 5 years. It comes up again, and court cases and all of this happens. And then finally in the 1950s, both governments actually agree. Look, let's have an agreement. So it was one of the first cross-border agreements that we would have take over the management of fisheries from Ban and Foyle Fisheries Company, and both governments would manage it. So that we would ease tensions, dilute the situation, but it still comes up because it's still not definitive. Where is the border on the? And this was what the British government were saying, when they were including fisheries in the Council of Ireland, because like if you spawn fish, say in the Donegal side of Lough Foyle, like those fish will go to the Derry side, So like it's very hard to manage that, and it's very hard to say where the border begins and ends. And so this agreement in the 1950s held, and then the Good Friday Agreement happens, and one of the cross-border bodies created subsequent to that was the Lochs Agency.
Right.
But it's still not definitive, and still we can still have.
You can't say where the border is on a sea, but surely are these things not decided? Like the EU has their fishing limits round.
Well, the UK have left the EU.
Yeah, that's another one. We did a good,
and it was an issue around Brexit that this come up again. So. But
there are artificial lines put around all these countries about lines we are allowed to fish and who owns what, isn't there? All sorts of countries. Spanish fishermen.
Oh yeah, territorial waters. Yeah, it's all invisible.
But nobody knows because it's.
And there's always encroachment, isn't there? Like there's always flashpoints. There's always accusations of you've gone into our territorial waters. But also like as it stands. As far as I'm aware now, like this may have changed. I don't think it has. That the British government claims that it has it and Northern Ireland, the whole of United Kingdom, has the right to those territorial waters around Lough Foyle and Lough Carlingford.
Right.
Whereas the Irish government still contends that under the Anglo-Irish Treaty, the Irish Free State was for the whole of Ireland, and it was only the Government of Ireland Act created Northern Ireland, which was the 2 city boroughs and 6 counties, that opted out. So all of Ireland's territorial waters still is a legitimate claim that's still part of Irish government's territory. So, and they were even threatened to take it to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. They didn't, and they got a lot of abuse from the Sligo Champion, for example. Newspaper said, "Is Sérstad Free State really a country?"
Right.
And the Donegal fishermen saying, "Look, if this doesn't happen, if you don't, look after our claims to fishing here, we're going to remember you at the ballot box."
Well, this is 1975, of course, in the middle.
This is actually the 20s now. But
it's 1975. This court case is, and some of the language used around it is quite interesting because you've Mr. John O'Halloran, the Secretary of the Cooperative Development Society, Dublin, said that the High Court decision about the waters around the 6 counties that were under the jurisdiction of London was an arrogant one, and that only Dublin had the right to decide the matter. He called on the government in Dublin to refute this claim and to immediately state that the waters are indeed Irish and to assert their right to them. Mr. O'Halloran said he questioned the right of a judge in the 6 counties to decide what is Ireland's and what is Britain's.
Yeah. I know that was going on for decades.
And that's the language in 1975, which goes back to 100 years ago. So
yeah. And it can still come up.
Right.
Because, I know it's pre-settled now. Look, there has been a Windsor Framework Agreement. So it's. I know obviously a lot of unionists are not happy with that agreement,
right.
But it's settled down at the moment. But because there's a border there's always an opportunity for flashpoints and for disputes.
So you're saying fish spawned in Donegal can end up in Derry,
but they don't know if they're Free State or Northern Ireland fish.
Well, are they going to Derry or Londonderry? You don't even know which part of the Derry are they going to. But they go there, and the Derry fishermen can fish them and go there ours.
Well, look, there's this agreement now that's it's pretty amicable. But see, the Lochs Agency gives regulations of what you can and cannot do, but it can't enforce it. Who enforces it? It's not the Lochs Agency. So, it's so that is as it stands is a cross-border body that deals with the management of fisheries, basically in Lough Foyle and other kind of territorial waters where there's division involved. But it can't enforce it. So and as it stands, as I said, both governments, as in the UK government and the Irish government, believe have divergent viewpoints of who actually has ownership of those territorial waters. Like even going away from Lough Foyle for a second, like one of the first cases actually was a steamship called the Greyhound, and it went out on a Sunday. But the Northern Ireland government brought in an act in 1923 that you couldn't sell liquor on Sundays. So
really?
So
they couldn't sell liquor.
I think that was only rescinded in the 70s.
That sounds
or the 80s and 90s even. It's a long. Yeah, it was there for a long time. But
another act of storming this rule, if ever there was one. You can't sell liquor on a Sunday.
No, you weren't for decades. But this steamship company and the boat called the Greyhound said, "I've got a good way of getting around this. We'll go out to Belfast Lough and sell alcohol." And the waters are the Irish government's waters, the Irish Free State government's waters. So the northern authorities can't do anything. But they were brought to court, and the Belfast court decided, no, that's not true.
Good try, though. That is a good try.
Very good try, very good try.
Yeah.
And they were fined £2. So it's always, like, and this obviously incident here we're talking about here about Cushendall, this is about fishing, obviously, on the north coast of Antrim, So again, it's the Irish government's claim for decades, and it still, as far as I know, is the claim that all of the territorial waters around Ireland, not just Lough Foyle, Lough Carlingford, but all around the north, Antrim and down and so on, are Irish governments.
I'm old enough to remember unionists being very unhappy about Articles 2 and 3 of the Irish Constitution, which claimed the whole island of Ireland and all the borders round it. This isn't related to that. This is that those Articles 2 and 3 were post stuff. So this is 22, 25. This is Articles 2 and 3 completely separate, even though the Irish government technically claims everything on the island of Ireland.
Yeah, well, that was like the Articles 2 and 3 was a part of De Valera's constitution, Bunnock na HÉireann of 37, claiming territorial claim of all of Ireland. But every Irish government did that beforehand anyway, whether it was in the constitution or not. There was all this rhetoric about, we want all of the 6 counties back and we want United Ireland. But this is separate. This is basically based on first of all the Government of Ireland Act and what is Northern Ireland. What is this entity is, and the Irish government's claim. If you look at the actual reading of the Act, it claims that Northern Ireland is Derry City, Belfast City, and the 6 counties of Ireland. It doesn't mention territorial waters at all in explaining what Northern Ireland is.
Derry and Belfast.
The 2 boroughs, the 2 county boroughs, basically, and the 6 counties. Well, Newry wasn't a city then.
I know it wasn't a city then. It's not a city now, Cormac, for flipping.
I think it is.
Whoa, okay.
It's in Bangor a city now as well.
Yeah, everywhere's a flipping. Lisbon's a city.
Yeah.
The world's gone mad.
There's a lot of cities going around.
There's a lot of cities about. So that was happening in 1975 in the Irish news, but it relates back straight to 1925. And there's another story.
And it could relate to 2025. Who knows? Because it's still
not resolved.
It's still not resolved. Yeah.
Yeah. Should be border posts on Lough Foyle then.
Yeah, or we should get someone to swim it. I think a new guy who actually doing a report. He swam on the borderline, so to report.
So related is a subject that a story that I quite liked that came up with, which was athletics on the brink of division.
Yeah, division again. And what is it about division and this island?
What is it about division in this island in 1925, 1975, and 2025? But this is we discussed this before about football, about the division between the FAI and the IFA.
Yeah.
And I thought this was all most other sports, including golf and athletics and everything, were fairly united after partition. Partition had an effect, but you're saying there was a big split here in athletics.
Oh, way more divisive than in soccer.
Really?
It was bitter. I've met a few people involved in athletics and different athletic clubs around the country, and they say it still is bitter. There still is a lot of aftertaste of, and even cycling. It's amazing. Like I remember I wrote an article about partition in sport in the 50s. And so there was 2 cycling bodies, one that recognised partition, that there was actually an entity called Northern Ireland, and the other cycling body did not. And UCI only recognised. UCI is the controlling body for cycling in the world governing body.
Right.
UCI, yeah, I can't remember its what UCI stands for now at the moment. Something with cycling, I'm sure, is in the name.
I think C is probably for cycling.
Union of Cycling International, something like that.
Yeah.
I'd imagine something like that. It's based in Switzerland, but so it only recognised the cycling body in Ireland that recognised partition. So I remember there was the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne. So the recognised body turns up the Olympics, but so does the unrecognised body at the start of the race. And they have to be taken away, and then they turn up at a race.
Whoa! 1956 Olympics.
Olympics 56.
So there's an Irish Olympic cycling team that recognises.
You see, it's a recognised partition. So therefore, it is recognised by the world governing bodies.
If I'm a cyclist in Cork. What do you mean? Do I recognise partition? Why do the cyclists
even
have
Ronnie Delany? This is like
why do cyclists have to recognise?
This is complicated. I'm trying to explain as best I can, but Ronnie Delany he wins gold for Ronnie Delany.
Ronnie Delany.
He wins. You've never heard of Ronnie Delany?
No.
You've heard of Mary Peters stuff, haven't you?
Of course I've heard of Mary Peters.
Ronnie Delany won gold in the 1500 metres.
Gold and brought it home for you, 1972.
Well, Ronnie Delany is the equivalent of
one of the few people who can be proud of what she was doing in 1972 in Northern Ireland. Mary Peters. We love Mary Peters. Ronnie Delany. Never heard of Ronnie Delany.
Ronnie Delany is the equivalent of Mary Peters in the South.
All right.
Ronnie Delany won gold in the 1500 metres, probably arguably the most high prestige, the blue ribboned event of the Olympics. But maybe the 100 metres is now, but the 1500 metres still was the benchmark, and it was an unbelievable. Roger Bannister just broken the world record. Broken the 1 mile, 4 minute mile under 4 minutes in a mile in 1954. So it was there was such a high caliber race, and Ronnie Delany wins gold in 56. But he was in this athletics body, so he wasn't with the National Athletics Cycling Association. He was another body called AEAEU. So he recognised partition exists. We have to compete. So and a few other athletes did as well. So they compete in international competitions run by the IOC. Or the IAAF, the International Amateur Athletics
Federation. This is worse than splits in the Republican movement. I've got too many letters here. No, go back to basic. First of all, there's cycling and athletics are they're lumped together. Cycling and athletics.
They get united.
Right.
So cycling, athletics were divided for decades before partition.
Right.
But they actually get united. But it's a very
in
flimsy.
One body. Right.
Yeah, very flimsy. It's called the National Association of Cycling Athletics.
Right. But there's an All Ireland body.
Yeah, but it's very threadbare. Very threadbare.
A partition happens.
No, the body's created after partition.
The body's created after partition.
Yeah.
Was there no athletics and cycling before?
Oh, there was. But they're all different bodies. So GA ran athletics. There was the Irish athletics.
Okay. All right. So
this is
post-partition.
Post-partition. There's three main athletic bodies. They amalgamate as one, which was the National Association of Cycling and Athletics. But it's run by a guy called J.J. Keane. He's a guy from Limerick, and he's a big GA man. Right. So he doesn't believe in RUC competing, for example. British soldiers competing. He competing on Sunday is absolutely 100% fine with him. And then it becomes very divisive in the north because a lot of people involved in athletics are of unionist persuasion, or could be in the RUC. Or do not believe in competing on Sundays. All of those issues come up. So it literally by 1925. So I think that they agreed to join in 1924, but by 1925 it's obvious this isn't going to work. Right. And it's all made whereas the soccer, as I've explained before, the soccer split is about internal politics. That Dublin felt to getting a raw deal off Belfast. Athletics is almost about partition, and they've got pamphlets decades after saying we will not compete in an Ireland that is divided. We will not accept partition in politics or in sport. And they actually, so then, but after 1932, there's no.
So sorry, where's this body based? The body,
in Dublin,
governing
Dublin.
Is based in Dublin, but rules for cyclists and athletics and what? So
in the whole island.
On the whole island.
But then Belfast leaves basically.
Right.
And it amalgamates with UK kind of athletic bodies.
Right.
But 1932, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, has to rule on this division within athletics.
Right.
So they do compete at Los Angeles, but then the International Olympics Committee says we will only accept competitors from your jurisdiction. So basically, we recognise partition; it exists. And then the NACA said we're not competing at Olympics. So they didn't go to Hitler's Berlin Olympics. There was no Irish athletes at that. So it's gone on for decades, this division. And there was a number of attempts.
There were no Irish athletes at the Berlin Olympics because of
running,
partition.
basically.
Yeah, see, we could have
Because of
beaten
partition.
Jesse Owens. Some fella from Cork could have beaten Jesse Owens.
Yeah.
That could have changed
It
history.
could have happened.
Could have happened.
Yeah, who knows?
So sorry, just to be clear, there were no Irish athletes at the Berlin Olympics in 1936 because there was a split over partition.
Because of partition.
That's class.
Because
I didn't know that.
The athletics and cycling body
That's-
said, we're not recognising the international federations, the IOC,
Right.
ruling that it can only be based on the jurisdiction, the political jurisdiction.
Right.
So NACA could not have athletes from the north, basically, and they absolutely point blank refused to actually compete in Olympic Games. So they didn't for decades. But then another body, as I mentioned, one Ronnie Delany was in. I think it was the AAEU. I'm sorry for all these acronyms and.
What's this guy's name again? Delany.
Ronnie Delany.
Ronnie Delany.
He's still alive. He's
Is he?
Yeah, he's in his 90s.
He won the 1956.
Absolute legend in Irish sport. So he's
I'm going to look him up.
He's the last athlete from the south to win a gold medal in track and field.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so it's
Is Sonia Sullivan?
no, she won silver in Sydney.
All right.
Yeah, Sonia should have won. She was definitely good enough, but she only won silver. Only won silver. Says
I forgot you were a sporting nerd. I should know that. So okay. So tell me what's happening in this article, April 20th, 1925. Athletics on the brink of division. This is when the split actually happened. Then.
Yeah. So this is when so if you read it out here, a special meeting of the Belfast County Board of the NA and CA, the National Athletics and Cycling Association of Ireland, was held last evening in the Belfast Celtic Pavilion. Mr. WMR is presiding over large attendance delegates. The meeting was called to consider communication from the central body of the association suspending the officials and competitors in the athletic events of the Celtic sports on Easter Monday, and the matter was discussed at length. And the whole situation since the agreement forming the National Association was entered into was reviewed. A resolution was proposed to the effect that unless the embargo was removed, no delegates should be sent to the annual Congress of the Association on Sunday. And no delegates from the North went to that Congress. So even though it was a united body, there was no delegates from the North in 1925 at the annual Congress of the National Association of Cycling and Athletics.
Right.
So it didn't look well from there, and it got worse.
Right.
And it got very political as well. And most of the division, unlike with soccer, was around that partition.
Politics, real politics.
Real politics, like the constitutional politics of the island, essentially. And that was the case and it was bitter. And that's why I was talking about cycling earlier on, that, so I mentioned that cyclists turned up, they shouldn't have turned up, because they hadn't officially entered into the Olympics and were thrown off basically the starting line. They did the same thing in Rome in the World Championships the year after, in '57, and one of them actually boxed an Italian policeman in the head and was imprisoned. So it was crazy. The amount of stories that were related to this division. There was marches, there was like threats, and there's so much going on over the decades about and I mentioned about this AAEU, the bodies Ronnie Delany joins, the athletes in Dublin who wanted to compete in international competitions.
Had they accept partition?
Yeah, so they accepted. They accepted the IOC's ruling that it has to be based on political jurisdiction, and they
accepted. Sorry, the jurisdiction of basically a Belfast organisation, or it was an Irish organisation.
No, they done Dublin one, but it was only for 26 counties,
right?
As opposed to NACA always considered itself a 32 county body,
right?
And wouldn't accept anything else. But AAEU, the one Ryan Delany joins, so they actually start competing in Olympics from 48. There was obviously no Olympics in 40 or 44 because of the Second World War, but 48, and they actually don't go under the flag of Ireland or the as was the English language name of the country. They go under the banner of ERA. Right. Between Egypt and Finland. Even though the English language name of ERA is Ireland, under the Constitution, it's only the Irish language name is ERA, but the IOC said, no, you have to go under ERA, not Ireland, because Ireland's the whole island, and you're only competing for the 26 counties.
So this is.
Are you more confused?
I'm more confused. I thought the football thing was confusing because as we discussed before, and the football thing, I kind of know Football Association of Ireland represents the 26 counties. IFA, Irish Football Association, represents Northern Ireland. The FAI split from the IFA.
Yeah.
So who split from who here?
More the Belfast.
Right.
So the Belfast athletes and they split from the NACA.
Right.
But the problem for the NACA was that the international governing body split from them basically.
Right.
And then they split from the international body. So.
And if I'm an athlete in Cork or Sligo or Galway and I want to run, I have to end up with the Belfast organisation, the All Ireland organisation that recognises partition.
AAEU was and that's what Ronnie Delany joined. So when he came home, like in this unbelievable triumph, winning gold 1500 metres in Melbourne, he doesn't get universal acclaim,
right?
Because he is seen as someone who has recognised partition,
right,
within athletics bodies. So it's tell you what, he wasn't.
Oh, I love this sort of stuff. Seriously, so he wins a gold medal at the Olympics in 1956, and people come back and go, Free State traitor, or no, you've betrayed.
Some do. No, obviously, most people.
You betrayed the men of 1916.
Most people are euphoric with him winning because it was an unbelievable.
Great achievement.
There's actually a colour version of the race I saw recently. It's just an unbelievable performance by him. But yeah, he doesn't have universal acclaim because he is one of those athletes who has accepted partition and joined a different body to the national body. So does
this have any resonance today, say, in a certain golfer who won something recently? And people
Darren
go,
McDougall won
not
Ray
everybody's
McDougall won 1991.
A certain golfer, Rory McIlroy, wins.
We're actually in his hometown in 1L Studios here in Hollywood.
1L Studio in Hollywood, but even
I haven't seen a green jacket yet. Have you?
No, I haven't. But there are people who are begrudging because he puts up the Northern Ireland flag, and people go, "Oh," and there were lots of unionist politicians going, "Well done for Britain and for the province," and people are going, "No, he's not from." And God love him, he's going, I just want to play golf.
Yeah, it's very awkward for Rory, isn't it? The whole identity issue, and he gets asked more about it than any other sports person on this island. And look, he obviously competes. But I think a lot of the golf is an All Ireland body.
Right.
Golfing Ireland. It was the Golfing Union of Ireland.
It was an Olympics. It's an Olympic sport.
Yeah, so he's competed for Ireland.
He's competing for Ireland at the Olympics. He has a Northern Ireland flag when he wins. He's putting up the Northern Ireland flag, which isn't really. Well, we can discuss that on another where that Ulster flag came from, because that's kind of an invention in the 1970s, really, isn't it?
I think we're talking about that next episode, isn't it? Or,
Anyway, but basically these issues about you're a Brit lickspittle, or you've betrayed the men of 1916 or something by not flying a tricolour, they still exist today.
Of course it does, yeah. It's symbols of like flags, anthems, emblems. They're very divisive, and they are political. There's a political statement attached to them. So look, Rory's had to dodge that, that question, or like sometimes he's handled it awkwardly, sometimes he's handled it well. It's a very difficult question, and for him, and look, he's had to deal with that. Now he has decided to compete for Ireland. Because there was talk he was going to compete for Great Britain in the Olympics, but he chose to compete for Ireland. And it's done, I think, in 2 Olympics now.
And he got into a bit of bother for that.
He's gone into the bottom. Yeah, look, Rory is, and we saw after he won the Masters, a number of weeks ago, that people, depending on what side of the border or the fence you were, you were claiming he was either Irish or British or Ulster. I
saw a few things on Twitter about the SDLP didn't congratulate him enough, and all of that. And you're like, shut up, would you? Just to be honest with you, I'd ban golf. I mean, Rory's brilliant and all that, but it's a terrible sport. Yeah. But
I do love golf. I love the Masters. So I was up until 1 o'clock that morning. And,
No.
It was very emotional. I was a physical wreck after that round.
Right.
God, he snapped defeat from the jaws of victory. It looked like on so many occasions, but he kept in there. So it was unbelievable.
The Irish Cup final on the 3rd of May. Cliftonville are playing. No?
This week.
Is it this week? Yes, it is this week. It's this week. There's a controversy there about playing the national anthem, which they didn't play, and then they started playing again. And now, the last time I was at the Irish Cup final last year, where I was sitting, I couldn't hear it, shall we say?
Why
because
couldn't you hear it?
Cliftonville fans were they were chanting other stuff. But that's, stuff like this is kind of it still infuses all sports. Is there any sport that can say, listen, don't worry about we're above this.
No, look, no, not on this island. You know, it could be a sport of tiddlywinks, and you'll still
Yeah.
get someone divided over it. So yeah, it's the nature of the beast. And people say, "Oh, sport's not political, or they're not connected." They're totally connected. Sport and politics are totally intertwined. You know, there's sport is very political, and you are, no matter what you do in terms of sport, where you choose to play a game, what flag you choose, or what anthem you choose, like that is a political decision, and it has ramifications. And I hate when people, I have nothing to do with politics and we just want to play sport. You know, people love sport, but it also is a big part of their identity, you know. So, and you can't get away from the politics of sport. And sports people and organisations shouldn't even try and dodge that question anymore. You know, just recognise they're connected.
I heard a great story. I'm not sure if I've said this before in this podcast. A great story that there was a small group of people who were the Morris Minor Appreciation Society. We were in Belfast, and the Morris Minor Appreciation Society split on the issue of partition, whether to join the Morris Minor Appreciation Society of Britain or the Morris Minor Appreciation Society of Ireland, and what the benefits were of those. So these things kind of, like, no matter what, they still. And they're practical.
Motor racing is divided in Ireland, but motorcycling is not.
Right.
Motorcycling is an All-Ireland body. Right. Whereas motor racing is not. But motor racing was actually a very amicable division. They still, you know, worked together, and they still had All Ireland rallies. So it was a very good division. But the motor racing body of Northern Ireland wanted to stay connected with the UK body, whereas the one in Dublin went on its own. So yeah, like that's another example. We could go on all day about this.
Right.
But if you want to get in touch, you can at any time on WhatsApp or email. Our number is 07483 313 842, or you can drop us an email on irishhistoryboys@gmail.com. And maybe you've got some questions on that somewhat confusing thing about athletics and cycling.
Yes, or
but it existed, you know, it's there, and hopefully we've gone some way in explaining, like.
Or you can just send an email going, Tim McGarry is a moron. How could he not know who Ronnie Delany is? I apologise to Ronnie, is a gentleman still alive. God bless him, he's still alive.
I'm sure. Like, I know who Mary Peters is. I wasn't born in 72. You know,
you weren't born in 72.
No.
Oh God, that's the most depressing thing I've heard all day.
But everyone knows. Well, okay, but not everyone. A lot of people know who Mary Peters is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But no, you can't get in touch with us. Contact us if you have any questions or any topics you'd like us to cover. Do you want to talk about? And do you want to go back to the 75 in this one? Do you want to talk about? Do you know something that I remember from 75 that you won't remember because you were a very young child?
I wasn't even a child.
When were you born?
76. So it was I wasn't even born 75.
God, sorry, just give me a moment here, ladies and gentlemen. Seriously, I got my A level in history in 1982.
Did you?
Yes,
I don't remember you mentioning that ever before.
Yes, I got an A level in history, lady. I know Dr. Cormac Moore is Dr. Cormac Moore, but I have an A. And by the way, the A level I got was in 1982 when an A level was hard. You know. Like, I was the equivalent to a PhD today. To be honest, you and I are kind of equals. To be honest with you, but a big.
Who won the history quiz though? Who won the history quiz in the promo we did?
Who was the history?
Who won that history quiz? It was
I think you did.
I think I did, didn't
I? Yeah, there was some question about Katy Perry or something in space. I can't remember what it was. 1975. I remember this vividly.
Yeah.
South Vietnam surrenders after 30 years of war. And this was a big story. I remember the Vietnamese boat people coming to Ireland in 1979, I think it was. But the Vietnam War that had been going on since the 50s finally ended in May the 1st, 1975. And the Irish news that day was South Vietnam surrenders after 30 years of war. Communist-led forces won South Vietnam's unconditional surrender yesterday. The capitulation was swift, coming only some 4 hours after the last frenzied American withdrawal and virtually without bloodshed except for brief resistance from pockets of government diehards. People who may not be of your age won't remember this, but may remember the footage of the helicopter at the top of the embassy, and people literally clambering onto the helicopter in 1975.
Yeah, no, it's obviously a very iconic image. And obviously we all grow up watching American movies and you know, reading about the disaster that Vietnam was for American foreign policy. Look, it's been with our lives though, because how many great movies have you watched about the Vietnam War and documentaries and books and so on? You know, so
Apocalypse Now,
Platoon, Deer Hunter.
Yeah, it's not great.
I love the Deer Hunter.
Yeah, no. Do you like the Deer Hunter?
Yeah, that is great.
Good song, but no, it's all right. It's
Christopher Walken was.
Well, you see that?
winning
You see, the
yeah.
Deer Hunter is one of those things you go, oh no, it's the poor Americans. God love them. They had a terrible time in Vietnam, and you go, did you really? Yeah, you had a terrible. I'm so sorry about that. How many people did they kill over 30 years? You know, there's a great book called The March of Folly.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember the name of the woman who wrote it, The March of Folly, and it gives an example of the Vietnam War about why America got involved with the stupidest thing, absolutely no political or economic reasons for it. It was just madness from beginning
And then
to
it just
end.
spiraled and spiraled.
It spiraled and spiraled and spiraled, and they
yeah.
got themselves involved in a conflict that they really shouldn't have bothered getting themselves involved in, and made a complete hash of it.
And my Americans got killed. Was it 55,000?
55,000, but how many Vietnamese were killed?
This is it. How many were killed by Americans?
Yeah.
A lot more.
Yeah. Anyway, they're getting tariffs on them now. As
Yeah, poor Vietnam is getting really struck by tariff. And Cambodia.
yeah, that'll teach you. That'll teach you to send the Americans packing in 1975. We come to the end of this podcast, or do you want to do one more topic? Have you happy enough?
No, I think we'll let's we roll over the next one and talk about.
Well, look,
we'll talk about symbols again. I think next time around.
We're going to talk about symbols and flags and borders.
We love talking about those things. Don't we?
You like a good flag? You like a good border? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't speak anymore. Do you know why I can't speak? I've just found out he's not even just younger than me, but an awful lot younger than me. That's so depressing.
I don't know. Should I be depressed that you think I shouldn't be younger?
We are the History Boys. Join us next week when we'll be discussing all sorts of things from the Irish news from 1975 and 1925. Thank you very much for listening and watching.
Thank you very much.